Hey everyone, Aisha here. And so I just wanted to record this video to be able to give you hope. So if you are a pregnant single mom or if you are new to your single mom journey, it might feel as if the walls are closing in. It might feel that there's no hope, right? But I'm here to let you know that there is hope. There is joy, right? Because I remember when I first found out I was pregnant and that I was going to be a single mom, I literally sat in the darkest corner of my house, right, in my room, and would rock back and forth in a fetal position, just like saying Jesus, right? I really struggled to find the hope in the situation that I was in. I was struggling to find the hope in the fact that I was going to be a single mom, and not just a single mom, but a single mom of twins. And so I just remember that feeling of, okay, so now what? How do I move forward? Are things going to get better? What's going to happen to my finances? Am I going to have a support system? What's going to happen to my business because I was a full-time entrepreneur? And so there were so many questions, and the more questions that I asked, the more fear that I had. And it literally felt like the walls were closing in. And so if you are, at the beginning of your single mom journey, if you're navigating an unexpected pregnancy, I understand how you feel like the walls might be closing in. But I wanted to teach from Matthew 14:13-21 to be able to show you how to renew your mindset, how to have a fresh outlook, and how to develop an outlook of hope and joy on your single motherhood journey. Okay? And so in Matthew 14, this is really a famous story in the Bible where Jesus feeds the 5,000. And so verse 13 says, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. When the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. And when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place. Catch this. We've already heard the word desolate twice, all right? So we know it was a desolate place. So this is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away and go into the villages and buy food for themselves. But Jesus said, they need not go away. You give them something to eat. They said to him, we only have 5 loaves here and 2 fish. And he said, bring them here to me. Then he ordered the crowds to sit on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looks up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over, and those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides the women and children, right? And so when we most of us have heard this passage taught a number of different times about God's provision, but I wanted to talk to this specifically for single moms who are unexpectedly pregnant, who are, might be pregnant, maybe not unexpectedly, but situations and circumstances have changed, and now you're going to become a single mom when you give birth. Or maybe you just became a single mom on your journey for a variety of different reasons. And so what I wanted to highlight from this, and so at the verse 13, right? So number 1, Jesus had alone time. It says when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from here in a boat to a desolate place by himself. One of the things that we constantly see in scripture is that Jesus has alone time. Jesus has that time where he's connected to the Father, right? Even though Jesus is God the Son, he makes sure he values his relationship with God the Father. And so if you're in this place where you're facing unexpected single motherhood, if you're unexpectedly pregnant, you have to be able to create that alone time to be able to be with the Father, to be with God, right? That's really important, to be able to strengthen your faith in this season, because without faith, I don't know how you're going to get through. And one of the most critical things for me when I was early on in my single motherhood journey, I had to rely on my faith, because everything that I saw with my natural eyes did not make sense, and it just seemed like chaos. It seemed like overwhelming. It seemed like stress. And so it was my faith, the fact that I was able to withdraw at times to be able to process my emotions. It was very important for me to be able to see a therapist and to be able to talk to friends, but I also needed time to be able to sit in faith and in prayer, right? So that is super important. And so, but get this, when the crowds heard this, they followed him on foot from the towns. And one of the interesting things about how and then it goes on to say, when he went ashore, Jesus went ashore, he saw a great crowd, right? And so we hear crowd two different times. So there was a lot of people. One Jesus, a lot of people, right? But what I found was interesting is that the King James Version translates the word crowd as the word multitude, right? Multitude. And when I saw this and when I was starting to really reflect on what I was going to teach, one of the things that I thought was interesting was with the word multitude, right? Because when you're early on within your single motherhood journey, and when you're on your single motherhood journey in general, you could feel like you have a multitude of problems. So whether it's a multitude of problems with your finances, dealing with the old relationship, maybe you're trying to figure out if you have other kids, how to get your children acclimated, right? If you're pregnant and you have other kids, so how do you get your children acclimated? If you're a single mom through divorce, how do you get your children acclimated? So what is life going to look like? What is your new routine going to be? What does school look like? What are your dreams going to look like? Are you going to even be able to maintain your hopes and dreams and have hopes and dreams? Are you going to have a support system? There are going to be so many things that are going to be running through your head that it's going to feel like a multitude, right? And if you think about, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Chosen, but you see, if you've ever watched the show The Chosen, when Jesus is walking, right, he's surrounded by crowds pushing in on him. I remember I saw the episode of the woman with the issue of the blood. She was like pushing through the crowds because the crowds were so thick around Jesus, because when Jesus was around, people got healed. Let me say this one more time. When Jesus was around, people got healed. When Jesus was around, people got delivered, right? So you have to be able to press into Jesus to be able to get your healing, get your deliverance, and not just physical, but emotional and mental healing and deliverance, because that is who he is. He is our Redeemer. And so it goes on to say, when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away into the villages and buy food for themselves." So catch this. When the disciples looked at the situation, number one, they were in a desolate place. And the word desolate, according to the Webster's 1828 dictionary, says laid waste, in a ruinous condition, neglected, destroyed, right? Laid waste, in a ruinous condition, neglected, and destroyed. And so it's laid waste, it's barren, right? There's nothing there. It's in ruins. And so you might be feeling like your life is in ruins. I remember when I first found out I was pregnant, I was just like, oh my gosh, I could not see how my life wasn't going to be over. But Jesus turned everything around, and it wasn't over. It was just beginning. And so I want you to understand that you might be in a desolate place right now. It might feel like your life has been laid to waste, especially like if you might be experiencing like a marriage breaking down or a relationship breaking down, or you had your mindset on certain things and the way things were going to go, and now it's going to be different. You might feel like all your plans have been laid to waste. You might feel like your life is in a ruinous condition, right? You might feel like things are destroyed. But get this, Jesus brings hope and abundance in the desolate place. And so when you have Jesus, you are no longer in a desolate place. You are in proximity with the one who creates abundance and overflow. And I'm going to explain this in a second. And the King James Version translates desolate place as being a desert place. So think about the desert, and what grows in the desert? Nothing. And so the concordance also translates this and describes this as solitary, lonely, desolate, uninhabited, a wilderness, lonely regions, right? When you're a single mom, this walk can feel very lonely at times. You can feel like you're in it by yourself. And even if you have a support system, you can still feel like you're in it by yourself, because you can feel like no one understands what you are going through. No one understands the struggles that you're going through. No one understands the emotional weight that you're carrying. And so sometimes you can feel lonely in a crowded room. And the other thing it says is deserted by others, right? As a single mom, you can feel deserted by others, especially by the man who left, right? I felt deserted. I felt rejected. And I felt rejected by friends because I had friends who promised to be there for me as a part of my support system who ended up not being there. And so I struggled with feelings of betrayal, feelings of being deserted by others in this desert place, in this desolate place. And when you get in this place, I keep saying it can be hard to find hope. But as we continue to go through this passage, you're going to see that there is hope in this desolate desert place. Another definition says deprived of the aid and protection of others, especially of friends, acquaintances, and kindred. And of a woman neglected by her husband, from whom the husband withholds himself, right? So of a woman neglected by her husband, from whom the husband withholds himself. So being left, right? Being left, being abandoned can feel like a desert place, desolate place, a solitary place. But get this, how did Jesus respond? So when the disciples saw the same situation as Jesus, the disciples saw problems. They saw that it was desolate. They saw that the day was over, and they were just like, okay, the day's over, let's get back to business. And they saw that there were a lot of people who were hungry. So their solution to the problem was to just send the people away, right? But what did Jesus say? Jesus said they need not go away. And this is also, let me say this is kind of where abortion comes in, because some people, when they are faced with this situation, and I'm not saying this to judge, I'm saying this to give hope. Some people say make the pregnancy go away, and they end up terminating because they struggle to find hope. And this is why it is so important to be able to shift your mindset on not just the problems, not just how things are going to be able to change, but to focus on the hope. And what did Jesus say? Jesus said they need not go away. You can keep your pregnancy, right? The people need not, he didn't say that, but I'm just throwing that in there. They need not go away. You give them something to eat. And so get this, there's no food in this place. There's no grocery store nearby. And there are thousands of people. And Jesus says, I know all you see is desolation. All you see is ruin. All you see are no resources. All you see is lack of support. All you see is loneliness. All you see is what's wrong, what's not right, and how things will never work. But Jesus saw hope. Why? Because he is hope. He is provision. He is our strong tower. He is our redeemer. And he knew who his father was. He knew who he was, and he knew whose he belonged to. He knew who his father was. And so Jesus said, give them something to eat. And at this point, the disciples are probably looking at him like he's crazy. And he's just like, there's no food, Jesus. What are you talking about? Give them something to eat. And Jesus said, and then they said, we only have 5 loaves here and 2 fish. And Jesus said, bring them here to me. They only have 5 loaves and 2 fish for a crowd of at least 5,000 people. But Jesus didn't see the limitations and the lack. He saw abundance, and he knew what he can do. And he said, bring them here to me. Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. And I want to pause here. The situation looked crazy. The situation looked hopeless. But what did he do? He did some important things that we can learn from as single moms. He took what he had. He had a grateful heart. He took what he had. He looked at what he had and said, how can I use this? And he was grateful for what he had. And then he had a giving heart. He still helped others. Because I don't want you to miss this. In the desolate place, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish wasn't even enough to feed Jesus and his disciples. And so he took what they had, and he told the crowd of 5,000 to sit down. And he was still going to give away what he could have kept for him and his disciples to eat. So he still had a giving heart. He still helped others. And there's a passage in Job, which I love. Job It said, I forget exactly how it goes, but it said Job's fortunes were restored when he prayed for his friends. So when Job interceded in prayer, his fortunes were turned around. And this is one thing that I've been working on personally. Like I remember, I was talking to one of my mentors, and she said, stop focusing on what's in front of you. Stop focusing on what you want God to change. Start those prayer requests that you get. Start calling those people out by name and start interceding for them in prayer. She said that doesn't mean that you don't pray for the things that you need or the things that you want God to do in your life. She said shift your focus and start praying for others. And then that way you can begin to not continue to make this into like a mountain, right? But you can begin to trust God with what you need to trust God with and start interceding on behalf of others. And it just reminded me of that passage in Job and how Job's circumstances and situations were changed around when he began to intercede for other people. See, sometimes we can be so focused on what we need God to do in our life or the things that might need to be fixed or changed in our lives that we neglect the fact that we're not the only ones going through something. And we neglect the fact that we're also called to pray and intercede for other people, right? And there's so many things that we can do to be able to be a blessing for other people. And this is super important. And so what else did he do? He looked up to heaven and said a blessing. So he thanked God. He had a grateful heart. He thanked God for what he had. He was grateful for what he had. He looked to God for everything. He looked to God for his provision. He looked to God for everything. And then he had faith. It took a whole lot of faith for him to be able to tell the crowd to sit down when he was just like, when he had 5 loaves of bread and he had 2 fish. They were probably looking at him like he was crazy too. But they did it. They were obedient. Don't miss this. This just came to me. The crowd was obedient to Jesus's instructions. So even if it doesn't make sense, are you still going to trust God enough and be obedient to the word of God? If the crowd walked away or people walked away because they were like, how is he going to feed us because there's not enough food? That person would have gone away hungry and missed their blessing. So Jesus had faith, but the crowd also had obedience to sit down and wait. And guess what? They all ate and were satisfied. And even that, there was leftovers. There were leftovers. So they took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. And those who ate were about 5,000 men besides the women and children. So not only did the whole crowd of more than 5,000 eat, the disciples had enough left over for each and every one of them to fill an entire basket. And I don't know how big those baskets were, but they might have been able to eat a few more meals off of that bread, right? And loaves. And so we have to understand, too, Jesus thanked God before the situation was turned around. And so when we're going through a situation, when we're navigating an unplanned single motherhood, when we're navigating unplanned pregnancies, thank God in advance for the turnaround. Thank God in advance for the support. Thank God in advance for the financial resources. Thank God in advance that your children are going to be healthy. Thank God in advance that He is going to give you everything that you need on the journey and more. And one of the other things that I thought was really interesting in this was Jesus didn't complain. And I don't see the disciples complaining either. They're kind of like, questioning like, okay, how is this going to work? And if you see this in other accounts within the Gospels, the disciples are like, okay, this is all we have, right? But they're not sitting there like the Israelites complaining about when he gonna bring this food, what he gonna do. We got these people out here starving, everybody hungry. What's he gonna do? They didn't complain. They didn't act like the Israelites. What they did was trusted Jesus enough with what they had, even though it didn't make sense. They were obedient to the instructions, and they were blessed. Jesus didn't complain. The apostles didn't complain. And the disciples didn't complain. Why? Because they knew God would supply all their needs, which was very different from the people of Israel when they were leaving the Exodus, in the Exodus, when they were leaving Egypt. They complained all day long, right? But the people here, they didn't complain. They trusted Jesus with what they had. They had a giving heart. They had faith. And they thanked God in advance for the turnaround in the situation. And everyone had way more than what they needed. And so I believe this is the same for you. When we trust God with what we have, when we have a grateful heart, when we have a giving heart, when we walk in faith and obedience, and we praise him in advance, he can supply all of our needs, regardless what that is. And if finances aren't your thing, one of the things that I hear all the time, most of the time from single moms, is finances. Even single moms who have, good finances, adding another person or multiples on the same income can be stressful. Having to worry about what things are going to look like in the future can be stressful. But sometimes the stress can be, are you ever going to find love again? Is anybody ever going to want you? Are you going to have a support system? How are you going to continue to work? What does this mean for your hopes and dreams? But you have to submit all of that to the feet of Jesus Christ and surrender it all to him and put them in the hands of the one who can multiply 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and feed more than 5,000 people with leftovers, with the goodie baskets, whatever those things are called, right? We have to be able to not look at the situation in front of us, but to fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. And the one thing I want to commend that I want to highlight about the disciples, they were initially looking at what was wrong, but when Jesus stepped in, they looked to Jesus. They looked to Jesus. And this is what we need to do as well. Look to Jesus. Take what you have. Be a good steward over what you have. Right? If you need peace in your mind, be a good steward over your mind. Feed your mind good things. And trust God to be able to give you the peace that surpasses all understanding. If finances are your thing, if finances are your multitude, manage your finances appropriately. Be a good steward over your finances. Make good decisions with your finances, with what you have now. But trust that the God of multiplication will multiply your finances and supply every one of your needs. If support system is your thing, is part of your multitude, seek God in prayer and say, Lord, guide me to the right support people. But be diligent in making sure that you're building relationships and vetting people while trusting that God is going to bring you the support system that you need for your children, because he is the giver of life. He is the one who called children the heritage of the Lord, and your children wouldn't be here if God didn't want them there. So trust that he did not take you this far to leave you, and trust that he who has begun a good work in you is faithful to complete it. Could trust the fact that he has his hand on you and your children. But be a good steward over the things that you have. And don't withhold anything from Jesus. The disciples didn't hold a loaf of bread back because they were afraid that they wouldn't eat if they gave it all to Jesus. They gave it all to Jesus. All. They surrendered their hunger to Jesus. They surrendered their desires to Jesus. All. We have to be willing to surrender all to him, because he is the one who can deliver. He is the one who can protect. He is the one who can save, and he is the one who can provide. And so I pray that this has blessed you today. I pray that this has encouraged you today. I pray, Lord, Lord, for the people that they have a radical encounter with you, and that they will trust you with everything that they have. They will trust you with the multitude. They will trust you with their desolate place in their wilderness, or whatever it is that they're feeling, knowing that you are the one who can save. And so I just want to say, if this has encouraged you, make sure you leave a comment, leave a like, leave a comment, share this with friends. share this with 3 people, right? If you know a new single mom, if you know a pregnant single mom, share this with her so she can get this encouragement too. But I also want to encourage you to pick up a copy of the book, Navigating the Impossible, a survival guide for single moms from pregnancy through the first year of motherhood. And in that, I talk about what it was like for me in navigating the beginning stages of my single motherhood journey from pregnancy through that first year of motherhood. And I wrote that while I was, my kids were about 2. So I was still in that early stage of my journey. And so it's super raw. It's super detailed because it's really designed to be a roadmap for you, to be able to have hope, to be able to have joy, and to be able to put some tangible plans and things in place that'll help you along your journey. So you start your journey off in a way that positions you to thrive, so you don't run into a roadblock, so you don't run into a wall and end up broke or broken. The book is designed to prevent you from being, in a stage of brokenness. And so I encourage you to pick up the book, Navigating the Impossible, a survival guide for single moms from pregnancy through the first year of motherhood. It's available on Amazon, or you can head to navigatingtheimpossiblebook.com, navigatingtheimpossiblebook.com to get your copy. And so, make sure you grab your copy. And I pray that this has encouraged you. Have a good one.